Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. Unlike Katarina, we are experiencing beautiful weather in Sydney. Another sunny day, even though we're going into winter. It's always beautiful here, but it's great to be a part of this call today. And hello, everyone from Sydney.
Nice to meet you, Michael. And of course, I would like to take a moment here to introduce the panel that is joining me here on stage. We have on the far right, Simona.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Simona, and I am one of the interns here at SwedCham, and super excited to be here together with you guys, and also both Sydney and Stockholm, all represented with Katarina and Michael. Amazing. Mia?
Hi everyone, my name is Mia Edin. I'm the head of HR in Asia for Evershed Sutherland, one of the global top 10 law practices around the world. I'm very excited. I'm a big fan of Spotify. I'm very excited to join the panel here today.
Thank you, Mia. And my name is Anders Lundholm, and I am the managing director for LHH. And at LHH, we're an organization who are very passionate about coaching and leadership development. And I'm, of course, also a big fan of Spotify, proud creator of a few really good playlists. So do feel free to find me there on Spotify. And just as a quick sort of backdrop before we dive into the conversation today, the overall theme is dare to think differently, right? And I think from a people point of view, this is so interesting, especially when you are on an exciting growth journey. We have sort of three main themes that we hope to discuss here today, and I'm kind of just going to toss it over to you, Katarina, because you always talk about that Spotify is a people-first company. What does that really mean to you and to the organization?
Oh. Katarina, you're on mute.
Very good. Thank you, MK. So I think people first, we say that we are people first, but if we take two steps back and are very transparent and very open, I don't think we necessarily knew 100% if we were a people first company until the pandemic hit us. Because you had to pressure test a lot of things that you have said or that you had packaged, or a couple of things that you had in process, or things that we deliver, I guess. But when everything is going smoothly, you don't necessarily know that you take your people's safety first, that you take your people's family safety first, and that everything that you do, you really believe it's a marathon and not a sprint when it comes to your employees' sustainability. And where a lot of decisions are taken, where you can do very fast and very short thinking of this is what we need to do because it's going to be good for the business short term, and they will save money short term. I think a people first company will always think about, okay, what happens in the long run and long term vision, and what's best for our people in every decision, because you do truly believe that it's your people that are the business. And it goes back to the 3 Ps, right? People, profit, and product. And you can't really do anything with product or profit if you don't have the best people.
Interesting. And I think that's quite intuitive in many ways. But how do you make sure that this is viewed as a business imperative, right? Because, again, we have a lot of business leaders here in the room today, some of them working for perhaps smaller organizations than Spotify. All of them have, of course, very vast growth ambitions. So how do you kind of balance that, short-term and long-term? Because a lot of people-centered initiatives tends to be a little bit more long-term. Michael, anything that you would like to add there?
Yeah, I think just echoing Katarina, it goes, for the audience out there right now, it really goes back to those 3 Ps. And at the end of the day, especially during this time, actions speak much louder than words. And we at Spotify, but many other companies that put a focus on people, can very much validate and create tangible data around commercial ROI. Not only does global research around the world show that if you have engaged, passionate, dedicated people who have a very strong sense of belonging and a very strong sense of purpose to what they're doing in your company, your company performance will improve. Why? Because your employees will be giving 120% to make your company grow. So it all really anchors back to the people piece of the strategy that drives the rest of the business. We at Spotify, and I think this goes on behalf of Daniel and Katarina's peers at the executive C-suite level of Spotify, all recognize the direct correlation between building a very strong people strategy connected to our commercial growth. So, Spotify is one of those definite people first organizations, and HR is very much leveraged as a strategic partner, not only on the people front, but also driving the business. So if we're talking about in this call, how do we do it the Spotify way? It's in very close partnership with the business, and the people strategy is very much linked to our commercial growth. And I think that's also part of the reason why Spotify is doing so well and where we are right now positioned in the market.
Okay, interesting.
And is this something that has developed over time, or is it something that has been there from day one of Spotify?
I think it's fair to say that it has to also start at the top. We are happy to have a founder and a CEO that really believes that we are a talent company. I think a lot of people would like to put a label that we are a music company or an audio first company, even a tech company. And I think we can all sign to that. But Daniel himself, usually on our intro days when we introduce all the new band members in the company, when he gets the question, you're like, you know what, we are a talent company, and I'm pretty sure that we could be successful whatever we do. So when he, obviously that is music to any CHRO's ear or any HR function, that the CEO really believes that it starts and it ends with the people, and everything in between is really important. And then you have to treat your people right. But if we're going to be concrete too, and to your question, was it always like this? I think in one way, yes. So there you can tick a box that maybe Michael and myself and the rest of the peers in HR, we're cheating because everything is like them, folded up for us, and it's been an easy walk to do everything that we do today. But I don't think it is like that. You in a company like ours, you go through different phases, and I think most companies do that. And you need to do people first in different ways when you are in incubation, and then when you go into scale up, and then you become a bit more mature company, and you have to stay relevant, because it actually starts with the vision or the mission. And if you dare to be purpose driven and value driven, everything needs to be entwined. So people strategy cannot be a satellite and something that we do when we can come with fuzzy things like balloons and cakes and just be happy. It's everything that we do from our department should actually, enable the business and the growth of the individuals. And here you can sometimes rely, if you are a bit naive and think it's as easy as when people grow, the company grows. When people are doing well, the company is doing well. And then you line up every activity, every process and everything that you do, and then we remove blockers and design everything from the organization to programs that the leadership team does. So it should be tainted everything that you do, but it goes back to the business.
Interesting. And I think that integrations was certainly a challenge for the panel here as we're trying to decide different topics, because seemingly from afar, everything seems to be quite interlinked at Spotify. And sort of on that people first topic, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is certainly something that you're quite well known for. And just talking more broadly about that, what does it mean to the organization?
MK, you want to go?
Well, I think it is an extremely important pillar of our people strategy, and it resonates very much, again, with who works for Spotify. If you think about our demographic at Spotify, 98% of our organization are millennial and or Gen Zers. And, between COVID happening, but also as the workforce evolves from baby boomers to millennials, and the needs and wants and how you lead and manage and what millennials and Gen Zers value start to transition and change, you as a company need to adapt to that demographic. And part of that adaptation is around the importance around what's happening in social media and social politics around the space of diversity, belonging, and inclusion. And for Spotify, what I love about this company, and I've been with Katarina and Spotify going on 6 years now, but prior to this, I've always worked for large global US-based corporations. And I think the differentiating factor in that space of D&I and B for Spotify and other companies is its authenticity level, right? In other companies, I've always experienced in my role as an HR leader that DI and B was almost more kind of we have to do it. We're forced to do it. It's the right thing to do. It's a hot topic. Let's tick the box and get it done. But at Spotify, we discuss it more as, well, we should do it because it's what's best for our people. It's a great way and the right way to treat other human beings in a fair and equitable way. So what I love about our DMB strategy is that a lot of it is so organic and grassroots because our people are so passionate about it. Our ERG groups are so passionate about it. So at Spotify, it's really not an HR-led track where we force it down our people's throat. Our people are demanding an environment where we create an inclusive, belonging environment where we're free from harassment, discrimination, ethnicities are equal, and genders are equal. Our people are demanding that, but they're demanding it from the bottom up. So if you have, I think that's what's great about Spotify is we have that passion and that fire and that organic desire to want to do what's best for our people, but also change the world. Man, with that sort of ammunition in your pocket, being a global head of DMB for a company like Spotify, half your job is done for you already. So I think we're in a very, very lucky position. But again, when it comes to our values and priorities, the other great thing about Spotify is from an integrity perspective, we always put people first and we make the right decisions based on what's best for our people versus sometimes what's best for the business. Right, we always have that equitable point of view and perspective around what's the right thing to do. And I think, again, to sum it up, Spotify, and I think a lot of it has to do with being a Swedish-born company and understanding the Swedish culture. But it's such a people-centric, authentic approach that finally a diversity strategy that I've worked on actually works, right? Because it's authentic and it's real.
But I also think it's you can add three things if I'm allowed to add anything. But to correct what Michael is saying. But what's been helping us, I think, from the get-go when we've been working with diversity, inclusion, and belonging, and trying to be a much more equitable kind of company is the things that we do within the business. One, we are very much a data-informed company, and then therefore we thrive from data and we go to data, not necessarily when we are lost or in doubt, but it helps us, and we all know that what we measure is getting done. So we were quite early on going into the numbers of diversity, right? And the way that we see it, diversity is you being invited to the dance, and then inclusion is you are being asked to dance, and then belonging is when they play your song. So diversity, getting the numbers right was really important, and I think we are on a very good track record, but we're not there when you look into all the different buckets of what diversity actually is. So the numbers and being data informed has helped us. The second thing that is really important and where I think has been our guardrails too is innovation, and being innovative is one of our values, but it's also part of our DNA. And it's very easy for us to understand that when everybody is the same, everybody went to the same university, everybody is a white dude in our company in a hoodie, and then nobody's thinking very much, which is very hard then to stay innovative. And that is really important and crucial and key to us. So becoming much more diverse and then cracking the code of how do we then truly create a culture of inclusive and a sense of belonging has been important. So that connection back to, again, being purpose-driven and value-driven, and being or staying innovative. And then I think the last piece, why do we want to do this? Our core business is oral, and if we're going to be mirroring all those great creators out there that is making awesome music and always made crazy good music, and we don't mirror that internally, and if we don't mirror the people that we serve or have as clients or listeners, then it doesn't make sense, right? So it's also very connected to our business idea, and so again, it's not a standalone thing that we do because it's the right thing to do. It is the right thing to do, but it's a pure business idea too.
Interesting. And on the topic of dare to think differently there, what are some of the kind of food for thought that you could share with the audience today? What are some of the learnings that you have? Because it's been a journey, I can imagine, right? And where you are today is perhaps very different 2 or 3 years ago. What are some of the kind of initiatives that you tried that didn't work, or what are some of the key learnings that you share, and what are some of the levers do you think organizations that are viewing this as with their curiosity, it's not perhaps working today, where should they start?
So should I take a stab at that, Katarina, please, by all means, go.
No, you start.
I think, when I think back on all of our initiatives that we've done within the HR world that impacted our people globally, in many ways, they all kind of started as somewhat of a test, never a final product, with our kind of philosophy that we learn from our failures, right? We iterate. So when we ship something out with speed. We test it within our population, and then we tweak accordingly based on the feedback that our people have given us. And then we tweak our programs. I think we've made tweaks to our parental leave program, to our work from anywhere program, to our vacation swap day program, and a lot in our compensation policy. We've evolved and we iterate as we roll a project out. So my point being is I think you start by first understanding your culture, your people, and how your people work, and how your culture fits within that world, and build a program that's relevant for them, right? If you just try to take a program from another company and cut and paste it into yours, that's when we start seeing things start to break down. Things where employees come back and say, yeah, but that's not us. That's not our culture. That doesn't make sense to us. And then things start backfiring. Right? I think the intent of also designing a program with the intention of doing what's best for the business and your people always needs to come first. If you're doing a program and you're designing a program or an initiative for PR purposes, or for purposes because it's just relevant in that time, and you think that it's important there, but you're really not going to act upon it, then that becomes much more toxic and will again blow up in your face. So for us, I think it all starts with listening to your people and building programs that really make sense for you guys and your organizations, because every company is different, every culture is different, and that's why every program should look different as it kind of makes it relevant to your workplace.
Yeah. And I'm just really curious, because we're talking a lot about growth and operating with speed, and how do you also achieve work-life balance, like with innovation and a lot of things going on? It's super interesting because it feels like we always see new things and new strategies with Spotify that are amazing, but how do you also get this maybe stability and work-life balance in your teams?
Exactly, and I'm particularly keen on learning, Katarina, on how you establish boundaries so you don't have to take a 7 a.m. call while you're having coffee.
So calls and coffee goes really hand in hand, but anyways, no, but obviously we struggle with that like any other ambitious, but also any other company in hypergrowth. First of all, we don't say work-life balance, we say work-family balance, and you can either argue that is semantic, but that is important to us, because work is such a big part of your life, and you can ask anybody that doesn't have a job how that affects you. So, and then you could argue that everybody doesn't have a family the way that we like to think about family, but family can be friends, and it could be colleagues, it could be the people that you do sports or hang out with and train your dog, and that is very important. The second thing is, most of our people does not have a global job. there are very few functions that has to operate the whole world. So when Michael wakes up in Sydney and where his colleague in LA that both reports to me wakes up, obviously that day doesn't have 24 hours, right? It has it's a longer, but I don't have to have meetings with both of them necessarily on the same day. So it's a lot of planning, it's a lot of discipline. But from the organization, how do we handle that people don't burn out? And if we take COVID or pandemic or the last year aside a bit, because I think that has been very, very, very different in so many ways, it is a reminder. It's what we train and remind our managers to remind their people. It is about, this is not the way you get ahead. We talk a lot about that marathon and not the sprint. We talk about being sustainable as an individual, as an organization, as a team. And we all know that it's important because we come from that culture that you need to take pauses, you need to take your walks and talks, you need to go off screen. And you do some of your best work when you take times and put into your calendar alone time, me time, or reflection time. And if you truly believe that you have to learn faster than the world is growing, you have to set aside time to do learning moments with yourself. If that is reading up, sleeping, eating well, walking or exercising. So that is first we flex that muscle, but now I think it's part of our muscle memory to really do that because. And then the other thing that has helped us too, a lot of people, Michael said that we are a lot of millennials. I'm not obviously one of those, but when children comes into life, which it does for so many people in that kind of phase, age of time, you have to have a way of stepping away from work and coming back and being flexible and having a culture where everybody understands and wants you to be a very, visible and pathetic, but also very close parent as well. And we all know that parenthood is the best leadership training ever because the feedback is instant of what works and does not work. And it's not necessarily a big difference of being leader and managing a team at any company. If you compare it to trying to manage your children.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And on that topic, and maybe Michael, you can share a little bit more from an APAC lens. Katarina, but first, why don't you share a little bit more with the audience today here? What does that parental leave package, what's the strategy behind it, and what's it tough to sell to the business when you created that initiative?
So I should let MK talk about this because he was one of 3 masterminds behind our global parental leave policy. But and this is so stupid, but I should share it with you because I'm amongst friends. But when I was thinking about us having more than 28 years of experience back then, 2014, of parental leave in Sweden, with 480 days shared between, both spouses and all that. One day was thinking like, why don't we do this for all our employees and maybe not the 480 days because obviously for our people outside Sweden, we have to pay for it. And pretty big investment for a pretty small company that hadn't been around for 15 years. We just turned 50 now. So 2014, I just stepped up to my boss, our founder and our CEO, Daniel, and said, what do you think about this? I think it could be good for attraction, retention, but I also think it's very, very close back to what Michael said before, staying real and authentic to who we are, our beliefs and our company. Being a Swedish company, I thought like, why don't we do this? So I had a conversation with Michael, and he sometimes reminds me of that conversation where I wanted him to run with this project, but I actually pegged it up with him, saying like, you can choose between 3 and 2 were really boring. And this was, I thought, super exciting. But Daniel's feedback to me when I said, I'm thinking like this, I don't necessarily know exactly what it would pan out like and look like and what the offering will be. Are you okay with that? And he took a second and he looked at me like, what took you so long? So, when you know that you're onto something, you're onto something, and then maybe your boss thinks that you are slow to have that aha, we should do this. But then I will leave it up to you, MK, to talk about exactly what the program was about and how we launched it.
Yeah, so after my conversation with Katarina, I think it was interesting because I was still quite new at Spotify. So I was still trying to understand and navigate the culture. And this was a great opportunity for me to connect with people around the world, especially some of the parents around the world that have gone on parental leave at Spotify, to see what worked, what didn't work, what would be great, what is the Swedish way of doing it, what works for us, what makes sense for our demographic, the size of company we are, the age group we are. And fast forward, in a very quick period of time, I'd say it only took a couple of months to design this thing. We ended up getting approval to provide all new parents, and this goes back to the inclusivity part of our values, regardless if you're a mother or you're a father or you're a surrogate or a gay couple or a lesbian couple or however way you identify, if you're a new parent, you are eligible for 6 months of fully paid leave by Spotify. The other interesting and differentiating factor of our program that I love is that regardless of when you join Spotify, you're eligible on day one. Because we also believe, a lot of other companies do this whole, you have to be with the company for at least 12 months to even be eligible. And then we just kind of took the more common sense approach. It's like, well, you can't, schedule your life around such an important decision around a work policy. Deciding to have a child is such a personal thing. It comes up any time in life. Why do we have to create a time restriction to it? It's just that it's not the Spotify way. It's not how we treat our people. So that's a great example of where you take an industry norm in designing a program and you kind of wave it off and say, you know what, we're going to dare to be different because we know our people best. So we're going to tweak it in the way that works for Spotify. We worked very closely with the CFO from a cost perspective, and I'll never forget, these are one of my favorite moments where, Barry, our CFO, was asking for a lot of details, and we provided the cost analysis, kind of hard to do when designing parental leave program. And then we sent it over to Daniel, and I think within minutes, he just literally, I still have the email, he just wrote back, "This is a no-brainer, go." And we just moved from speed from there. Fast forward 2 or 3 weeks later, we got a call from the White House. President Barack Obama and his administration wanted to put a focus on paid leave in America, given how poor the paid leave program is in America. Next thing you know, this program took us a journey to meet the Obama administration and Vice President Biden, and we had no intention again of publicizing our program and having the global impact it does today around awareness and the press and everything else. But if it's advocating for a cause that we're passionate about, we're very happy to help move the needle externally on this very important topic. But man, what a adventure that program was, though. And again, going back to it, we've iterated a lot on that program based on feedback from the people who have taken it. And when I look back at the proposal from a commercial ROI perspective, those Spotifyers who have taken parental leave since this new program was launched, we have almost a 100% retention rate. Our engagement scores and passion scores around those who have taken parental leave for us score significantly higher, and we are more likely to retain that top talent than lose them to a competitor because of the investment we put into a program like the parental leave program. And if we look at a normal company's attrition rate versus the cost of our parental leave program, backfilling, losing that institutional knowledge, reopening that role, recruitment costs way more than investing in someone's 6 months of parental leave pay. And we're seeing the ROI of that from a commercial perspective as well, and it's impacting our business in a positive way. So it's been an incredible journey, and we still get a huge smile on our face when we get those emails from new parents coming back, because it also changes their personal life, and it's such a great, warm, fulfilling feeling to know that we had a hand in helping the families of our people as well, me included, with my new son too. So I'm forever grateful for that program too. But it's been a great program.
Fantastic. And Mia gonna have another question, but Michael, from an APAC lens, because I'm sure that there were some cultural hurdles that you had to overcome to create a permission structure for people to actually take advantage and feel that that's okay. What were some of your learnings on that journey, just quickly before we head to Mia's question?
Yeah, so, from an APAC perspective, and relocating here 3 years ago, that was one of my biggest challenges. One of my biggest challenges as we built the people strategy here was how do we create a balance between, in a regional office like Japan or Taiwan or India, where cultural nuances are very extreme compared to Swedish culture or American culture, how do we create that balance, an environment where someone in Japan can feel like they're coming into Spotify's office and being part of an international company, but also respecting and acknowledging that we still work in Japan and honor Japanese cultures. And I think parental leave is a great example of where in some situations we have to literally pick and choose which one we go with. Where Japan, if you're a Japanese male executive in a company and say you're going to take 6 months off to take care of your child, that is a huge cultural no. That's just unheard of. And we literally had our Spotify fathers in Japan coming up to us with this concern. And this is when we remind our employees, again, okay, well, here in this case, you work for Spotify. We're going to follow the Spotify culture. You're part of a larger international Swedish company called Spotify, and we empower you and encourage you to take this leave, right? So it's constantly a balance around making sure that we have the right Spotify Swedish core values seeping into our regional offices, but also recognizing the very unique local nuances. What we won't ever do, we will always in that situation choose what's best from a values perspective to go the Spotify way if it's contradictory to local culture. And another good example is, the current situation right now with LGBTQ and the community in Singapore, where the Singaporean government literally doesn't recognize pretty much at a high level that classification of people, where we call BS on that. And we say, okay, well, in that case, we're not going to follow that cultural local nuance, and we're going to celebrate with pride, and we're going to be loud about it. And for our LGBTQ employees in Singapore, remember, you're part of Spotify. So you could be your authentic self, regardless of your local cultural nuance, which may kind of contradict that. So at the end of the day, it's really about that balance and picking and choosing and making sure that balance isn't too heavy on the local side and not enough Spotify, or too heavy on the Spotify where we ignore the local side. And I think JAPAC, with its very unique and special cultural differences, it's a balance that we need to keep by partnering very closely with managers and leaders and having them lead by example, having our senior leaders take that parental leave so that the people underneath them feel comfortable and empowered to do so. And we encourage all that at Spotify. Yeah.
Great.
Right. So I want to talk a little bit about learning and development, and especially reflecting on the last year, as well as the new working from anywhere policy that Spotify has in place. Coming from the legal industry, we obviously have trainees coming out every year and joining the business. And I think in certain parts of the world it's been quite difficult for them because not been able to come into the work, and a lot of the training, especially when you're a graduate or if you're a trainee, happens on the job. They need to hear those conversations taking place in the workplace. So how is Spotify tackling this in terms of replicating the live kind of in the office work environment, that sort of learning, but trying to do that in a remote setting, and whether that's COVID or working from anywhere moving forward?
Yeah. So first of all, I think we need at Spotify to acknowledge that more or less the last maybe 5 years we've been a distributed company. When you grow the way that we do and you oversee 187 markets and you have more than 93 offices in maybe 45 countries, you are distributed. And when you also only 15 years old, you never were a company that were analog. You were digital from the get-go, right? So when the pandemic hit us, there were a couple of things that helped us to design and change all our offerings and the way that we work 100% overnight, not over a week or a couple of days, overnight, was that we always say, welcome to controlled chaos, meaning that we know how it is to build and that really tall building with sometimes not the foundation in place and with that speed that Michael has mentioned a couple of times, saying that we were always digital, so we didn't have to figure out, okay, what tools do we communicate, how do we work, how do we collaborate now in this virtual way, how do we train and develop, how do we innovate and be creative together. All that was more or less in place, but we didn't have to use it on a daily basis. The second thing that helped us really a lot was that we didn't necessarily label it as being distributed first, but if you think of it, if you're a company and your whole company is in a city and you have one office, if you're big enough that you have several floors, you also already distributed. The only thing that also helped was this: when everybody was on the screen, it democratized a lot of meetings. It actually energized a lot of meetings, because before that at Spotify, a big bunch of people were in Stockholm and another cluster was in New York, and then people were like calling in from around the world. Very hard to be part of that energy, what's going on, feeling that you can jump in spontaneous into an agenda point or come with, it's like always like, okay, so I lost that moment. All of a sudden, everybody was on the screen, everybody had the same tool. It was much more democratized. You couldn't really necessarily always figure out who was the manager, who was leading the meeting. So it came with a lot of pros and not just cons. And then when it comes to learning and development in specific, I think we call it greenhouse because it is one of the 4 pillars of the people strategy. It is one of the things that are super important. And it's not just a saying that we need to learn faster than the world is changing, because the space we are as a business is a very competitive space, and it's very, very fast moving. And the Amazons and the Googles and the Facebooks of the world, you might have heard of them, is our competition. And it's quite fierce, both on talent, but also what we do in this space. And we have to recruit people with skill sets that you can't really today get in a university. So we also have to have like a uni or academy inside where we build on and what we call dress people with new skill sets and with the new technology that we need to develop and work with to keep that space of ours and the position that we do have. So it was more of a fast forward accelerated adjustment rather than going from one thing to another when it comes to us. Have we fine-tuned? Have we polished? Have we tweaked? We all know this. This is the year of rethink, redesign, redefine, reshuffle, relearn. So it's not just upskilling and cross-skilling, it is also off-skilling a lot. And I think that is what people find to be hardest. The things that was a winning bet could now be a losing bet. And you have to shift your thinking from the left load to the load of the left leg to the right leg. And we all know change is sometimes painful. So for us, it's back to those, the 3 C's instead of the 3 P's, right? It's communication, communication, communication. And that communication has to be clear, consistent, and compelling. So everybody don't have to know they don't have to understand and like a decision or the way that we do things. They need to understand why. And here the crisis and the pandemic has helped everybody to understand why are we doing things different now. And when you do understand and when the why is clear, the how is easy. So I think that is how we played it.
Yeah, and I was really curious also with how, with all this happening with working from anywhere and also with COVID, how do you ensure that you're employees are motivated, and how can you connect them with each other? Like what you talked about, walk and talk and staying active. Is this something you could maybe elaborate on? Like, I think that's very important for all of us, how we can stay active in these and motivated in these times.
Do you want me to? Yeah. So I think that's such a good question, and I think it's such a relevant one given what the world has gone through a year, and we've learned a lot. And Katarina and the leadership team and I talk a lot about this, even as recently as last night. It's a no-brainer, but how do you keep people motivated? How do you keep people passionate? One, you create an environment where they can be passionate and motivated on. Two, there's a new skill set that I think all leaders around the world need to start focusing on if they want to stay relevant. And when I think about manager effectiveness, it's going to be absolutely critical as the world becomes more distributed, even post-COVID, which is leading with empathy and leading with vulnerability. Having, and this again goes back to years and years of research around retainment of people. Why do people leave companies? The number one reason, without fail, year over year, is because they work for a poor manager, right? So, to keep your people passionate and motivated during these times, you need really, really good leadership. And you need really good managers. And now more than ever, you need managers to be more human. And we've done tons of surveys internally at Spotify. We just did our biennial tune-in survey. We launched this really cool cultural program called the Band Reunion, and the feedback around passion and engagement has all been really consistent. And that's in the pandemic, what they're missing is that human connection. But even from a virtual perspective, that human connection to just be able to vent, to be able to talk to one another as peers and colleagues and friends, and not look at one-on-ones and meetings and only focus on business. So for everyone in the audience there, think about your last one-on-ones that you've had with your people. How much of those one-on-ones consisted of things like questions like, how are you doing? How are your family doing? How are you holding up? What are your stress levels like? What are roadblocks that I could help remove for you, both professionally and maybe personally if I can? Versus how many of your one-on-ones are really just, okay, we have project X to do, tick, tick, tick. What's the status update here, status update there, status update there? And what we're hearing from our people, because they're so disconnected because of COVID, and our sense of belonging scores have never been lower because of COVID, and I'm sure that's the same trend that many companies are seeing. You need to fill that gap and keep your people motivated and passionate by increasing your levels of empathy and vulnerability, and really kind of breaking down your guard a bit, because we're all going through this pandemic together. Whether you're a senior vice president or you're an analyst, we're all stuck in this together, right? So let's support each other and help each other. And that's what our people are saying they miss the most, is just that ability to just not talk shop and work all the time and have 500 Zoom meetings, but just to talk about something else, just to have that chit chat, increases engagement, increases passion, increases your desire to want to stay at your company longer. But that all comes again with empathy and vulnerability, and leading in a very, very different way than we have pre-COVID, right? But like Katarina said, the walk and talks, getting out there, maintaining a healthy lifestyle as well, also statistically shows that employees perform better too. So what are you doing, CEOs in the audience, around your health and well-being space? Do you have a health and well-being strategy? Are you focused on the health and well-being of people, not only physically, but mentally? And that, again, is a commercial business strategy, because what I always tell my people in JAPAC, who, and I think anybody in that room can empathize, when we look at our tune-in scores, JAPAC actually scores the lowest when it comes to boundaries and work-life balance, and we see that there's a direct correlation between that and late-night calls, right? But are you giving them the right level of mental health and support to manage their time accordingly and have that strong work-life balance? And that's something that our people have been screaming for, and the way we deliver it, I think they've been very appreciative of it as well. We also, from a JPAC, APAC perspective, we also try to remind everyone that they own their own calendars. They should feel empowered to own their own calendars. And this is why I tell all my teams in JPAC, I said, if you're on a late night call and you're on mute and your camera's off, you shouldn't be on that call. You should be sleeping or spending time with your family. So start being much more selective of which global calls you need to be on. And the power of virtual meetings now is everything could be recorded. So you don't miss out even. You could watch it the next day, right? So we're leveraging technology in this virtual environment to also create a stronger work-life balance for our employees in JPAC. But going full circle again, it's never been harder to stay connected with your people and keep them motivated and passionate. And all the research and data is showing that if you have higher levels of empathy and vulnerability from your leadership team, your C-suite executives and every level of management, you're going to get more out of your people.
Fantastic. And Michael, if you don't mind, on that leadership topic, that I think is interesting because, Spotify being an agile organization, how do you ensure that that chaos that Katarina alluded to doesn't yield complacency, that people start taking actions? Because, many organizations claim that they like to fail fast. Speed is important. But how do you ensure that new leaders coming into Spotify are actually embracing that and are able to feed back and make sure that this agile culture can continue to thrive?
Yeah, I think the simplest answer, and no pun intended with the COVID environment, we vaccinate them and educate them to understand how to do it the Spotify way. That's the biggest challenge of managers coming into a company like Spotify. And I can speak for myself, coming from a company like Goldman Sachs in the US where everything was structured, to coming into the controlled chaos environment. It takes time, it takes education, and it takes awareness. And in many, many times, our leaders send us feedback saying, wow, when we joined Spotify, we had to actually untrain years and years of how we were groomed to be leaders to think in a different way. And it's unlocked so much potential for them because they're finally seeing different perspective on what we believe the right way of leadership is. But we have to vaccinate them as soon as they enter the company. We don't have this, we have very low tolerance for managers going, oh, well, I did it this way at my old company, so I'm going to do it at Spotify. Because we are such a unique, like you said, special, agile, fast culture, you got to get that vaccination and that education, but we give our managers time to lean into that as well. You can't change overnight. Great.
Katarina, I kind of recall hearing you saying that an investment in leadership is an investment in the workforce. What would be some of your advice to audiences here who are, they have a PowerPoint where they say that they're going agile, they want to be fast. What are some of the first smaller baby steps that they can take that are kind of the easiest to achieve?
No, but I think it holds true. To make simple easy is quite hard. So I think we tend to overthink things and processes and ways of doing it and designing things. And I think it goes back to several of your questions of, okay, so we all know about screen fatigue. So why is all meetings on Zoom or Teams or on Google Hangout? Why is it a walk and talk? And I have all the respect that there will have been countries where you were not allowed to walk outside. But if you're not necessarily taking notes, why don't you step out, just have it in your ears and then have conversation? We all also know that when you are out walking, your mind works in a much freer way. And you can also train your memory by, you didn't take notes. When you got back, whatever stuck in your head was most likely the most important things that you discussed during that hour. So you can have your one-on-ones, you can have your check-ins, you can also have some of your team meetings in a walk and talk. Back to the leadership, I think you have to have a philosophy of what type of leaders you have, and you have to have more or less a manager SLA. What is the service level agreement that you make, and what are the leadership criteria that you will recruit on, that you will develop on, that you will measure or evaluate, but also sometimes redeploy. And when I say redeploy, it's not about like up or out, or you cannot be a manager. Not everybody is suited to be a manager. It is a profession. It's not something that you got the chance to do because you were the best, engineer, or you were the best, person in accounting. That is, I think, very old-fashioned and very, very wrong way of promoting people. You should really understand, and you should commit to what it is to grow people and find your successor and make sure that the company will stay successful for ages and ages, that even after you leave. And that means that you have to have a true sense of, direction, but also who you are as a leader. And here we, as Michael said, we also vaccinate, but we talk to our managers before they work or come to work with us, and then we dress them. And it's if nothing is mandatory at Spotify except for when they come in, this is your toolbox as managers at Spotify. These are all the things that we expect from you. This is the way we do things. And when we say things that we do, it sounds like it's like over-engineered. It's very much admin heavy. It has tablets. No, what we need to train them is that, no, there is no tablets. And we actually turn the whole kind of, we work a lot with self-leadership, and it's not the manager, for instance, that, call you for a dev talk. You do that. You want to be awesome. You want to grow. So it's a lot about self-leadership. It's a lot about driving your own development, meaning, no, our managers and leader has not abdicated. They do other things, and they enable your growth. They remove blockers. They make sure that they rake the arena where you need to go out and dance and do tremendous great work for us as a company. So it's for a lot of people, it is to rethink what leadership and management is. And we also train people in all of those kind of buckets that we think it is. It is manager, it's leadership, and it's business leader. And you have to be able to manage all of those. And that is a couple of things that we do. And yes, it's not like we're looking for Ubermensch, and you don't have to be perfect. It takes time, and nobody wants to have a manager that does everything right either, because that actually would be quite scary. But it's very important to us to be open about that there's a mutual agreement, and there is more or less a contract, that these are the things and the behaviors and the skill sets and the capabilities that we expect from you, dear manager. And these are the things that we don't want to see at all. And you're not here to check and make sure that efficiency and productivity is there. We trust our people, because we know that when trust goes up, speed goes up, and trust goes down in organizations, speed also goes down. So you're here more or less to actually make sure that the team is wholesome, that you do understand that it's a team sport, that you want to grow sustainable and healthy teams, and that you see the individuals and make sure that they can become their best version of themselves as a very, very important link in the chain called Spotify.
Fantastic. Mia, do you have any final questions on crisis management? I'm conscious of time. Yeah, we have 5 minutes left, and I think sort of to just cap off our session today here, the lessons from crisis management and what you guys have gained operating across geographies, complexities with time zones, listening to people. What are some of the key learnings that you have learned that you will employ moving forward that you would like to share with the audience?
Yeah. Should I take this, Katarina? So as Katarina being the executive leader and sponsor for crisis management team, I think some of the key, most crucial takeaways that we've learned over the past year is a couple of things. One, in crises, speed absolutely matters, where there is no room for politics and bureaucracy. When it means that people's lives are on the line, whether it's COVID or a natural disaster or a terrorist attack, we need to act with speed, and we need to have the autonomy to make executive decisions. So one is, when you build a crisis management team, you need to make a social contract with the executives that when it comes to crisis, we are the subject matter experts. You have to trust us. We're going to lead this company through until we're safe, and we're going to take actions without having to go through 500 layers of approvals. That allows us to move quickly. The other thing attached to crisis management and speed and agility is the size of the team. Basically saying that less hands in the cookie jar is better. We learned this through the Paris bombing attacks about 4 years ago, where our people in Paris were scattered and we had multiple managers calling multiple people, HR calling multiple people to make sure that they were safe. People were checking in with one group but not the other, and we just couldn't track people down. And that was the moment Katarina said, stop. Everyone get your hand out of the cookie jar except for the crisis management team. And once you have that small team, then communication becomes faster, alignment becomes faster, confusion is removed, and you get to work quickly to make sure your people are safe. So I think the other critical thing there is around making sure your crisis management team is lean, but of course directly connected with other groups such as your facilities teams and your security teams, but really being the quarterback of managing that crisis in that small group. The other thing again is around, and this is more practicality, time zones. We have a crisis management team where at any point in a working day, someone on the crisis management team is up. I look after JAPAC in the Eastern Hemisphere. We have a couple of crisis management members in Europe, and then we have a couple in the US. So that any moment in time, if I'm sleeping or my peer in the US is sleeping and something happens around the world, we could start working on our own. We could start taking action. We don't have to wake up to it and then be reactive. So the ability to have a crisis management team that can deal with crises in real time, if you're a global organization, I encourage you to strategically think about who you place on that team there. And lastly, again, communication is absolutely critical in crises. There was a research study done, a survey done where in early days of COVID, 70% of people trusted their employer and felt more safe getting direction from their employer on how to keep safe during COVID than through government and public health outlets. So you guys as leaders of companies have a tremendous responsibility to keep your people safe. And we believe that to mitigate fear and anxiety in crises, being overly transparent about the situation, good news or bad, but letting our people know what the status of a situation is, regardless if it impacts them or not. If there's an issue happening in India, we let the global team know because we want our global peers to let them know that their fellow peers in India are okay. So having that level of transparency and open level of communication really helps mitigate that fear and anxiety during a crisis. So I would not recommend going on we're on a need to know basis. When it comes to crises, be open, be transparent. Again, ending this conference, lead with empathy, lead with vulnerability, be a human being in these circumstances, and you're going to get so much more out of your people.
Such a fantastic bow tying up our session here, Michael. That's truly valuable. Katarina and Michael, thank you guys so much for dialing in today. Any parting words that you have from the BAN manifesto or anything else you would like to share with the audience?
KB, over to you to close it out.
No, it was our pleasure to be part of this session. Thank you for inviting us. And with a wink, we will be back and talk about our Spotify work from anywhere program because we didn't have a chance to talk about that. So thanks again. Thanks for having us. It was delightful to talk a bit about what we do. And the only thing that I think we would like to underline and stress is every organization needs to figure out what is right for them. So it's not like one size fits all. This is what really works for us. All right. And please stay safe out there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
So, Anders and Mia, that was a very interesting talk we just had with Katarina and Michael, wasn't it?
Yeah, indeed. That was
great. Very insightful. So, I wanted to start off just like talking a little bit about our key takeaways of this talk. And tossing over to you, Mia, as an HR professional, what would you say would be your main takeaways from this talk together with Spotify?
Well, there were a couple of key takeaways, weren't there? One of them, I think, that we can't
stop stressing enough is the importance of aligning the business strategy with the people strategy, and a very important linkage in between there is purpose to create meaning for the employees, and so that they want to help deliver on the strategy. I think another one that really recognized with me, felt was the taking a long-term view when building people policies. So thinking, okay, they might be more, might cost more in the beginning, but long-term there's going to benefit the company and the people, in terms of retention, in terms of engagement, and so forth.
Yeah, and maybe just to build on what Mia said, more from an HR consultancy point of view, it's really key to have that alignment between HR and the business. You already mentioned the fact that there needs to be an alignment between business strategy and people strategy. I guess equally important is the level of sponsorship that Katarina and her HR team seems to be getting from Daniel. I mean, he seems to be, I don't quite recall what she said, but, what took you so long when it comes to leading with leave? Because he really do seem to believe that Spotify is a people-first company and that it's a business imperative to drive the business forward. So I think that's really key to drive through meaningful change that are actually having an impact on not only the people but also on the business. And, it's quite interesting to see that their kind of quote-unquote infamous initiative around leading with leave, that it's not a campaign. Correct. It's something that is really wants to be a part of the DNA of the organization.
Yeah, and that's something that Michael also stressed, the authenticity level, that before he's worked in other bigger corporation and it's been like you work with diversity and inclusion because you need to, it's something you should do, it's a hot topic. But now really they do it because they want, they do what's best for their people really.
Exactly. And on that topic, and I'm very keen on learning more from your point of view, Mia, but I think a lot of organizations, at least what I'm seeing here in Hong Kong and in APAC, that diversity and inclusion, diversity, equity and inclusions are top of mind for a lot of organizations. However, we don't necessarily see a lot of organizations, HR leaders and business leaders approaching this necessarily for what that means for their people, their customers, and how this could be, a business imperative that could really excel their business, whether that's innovation and so forth.
Absolutely. I mean, the integration of D&I into the organization. So, for an example, Spotify was mentioning about innovation being one of their key values, and they have a lot of diverse clients, whether they're subscribers, whether they are musicians. So they all have diverse minds, right, when it comes to how they operate. And I think it's important that they also then attract people from different walks of life. And Katarina spoke about that. You don't want to have the same people similar people from the same university, same background. But to integrate that into the business, it becomes a business imperative, doesn't it? To promote innovation and then link it back to D&I and diversity.
Yeah, I mean, that linkage, I think, is something that really strikes me from hearing this conversation. And preparing for our talk today, listening to some of Katarina's and Michael's podcasts and reading up on some material, everything seems to be quite interlinked when it comes to their HR strategies, whether that's the band manifesto, leading with leave and whatnot. It's not diversity and inclusion happening in isolation, but it's an integral part of the people strategies. And I think that's really where you see the impact, right? Which is it's really interesting to see.
Yeah, and really this connection as you're mentioning, and the 3 Ps, the product, profit, and people, and that this product and profit will be nothing without people. So that is really connected to business, connected to their Spotify's product, wherever they are doing. It's all about the people, and that they are a talent company really, and it's focused on people first.
It starts and ends with talent, right?
Yeah.
That's what Daniel was saying, I think. Yeah.
And also they focus a lot on people first. What would you say a people first approach is to you in a company? what is the most important thing of being a people first company?
Well, I think a lot of companies traditionally have thought about, clients come first, and I think it's an outdated approach, right? Because we all know that the people who deliver to our clients are our people, and if they're happy, they're going to deliver better customer service, and that's going to impact clients and ultimately profit. So by seeing the people first, or setting them first, which is imperative for the business, then we might need to take that again.
Exactly, and interestingly, kind of being the consultant, having a less commercial focus, I think it's quite foundational in many ways. They really believe in their people, that the people are resourceful, right? That they have a lot of tools to be successful.
Yeah.
And I think, once you have that initial approach in really believing in your people, you're putting your people first, and whether that's compensations and benefits, leadership development, onboarding, succession planning.
It's about thinking about the ultimate customer, right? Which is actually, the talent.
Yeah.
And making it easy for them, keeping it short, sharp, shiny, make policies transparent, make them measurable, make it easy to interpret so that everyone can use it within the organization.
Yeah, exactly. And on that note, I think it's also very interesting because another key takeaway that I had was around authenticity and integrity, right? Which I think are values that really resonate with talent of today. And interesting to see how that's being articulated as they're expanding now here in Asia as well.
Absolutely, and the importance of authenticity and empathy, especially this year. Michael was talking a lot about that in terms of how they've actually had to educate their leaders in putting that first, and not when you catch up with people over Skype or whatever tool you're using, having that, not just checking in how you're going with that project, what are you delivering, but actually how are you, how is your family, how you, like the mental well-being aspect as well coming into play.
And that's also the one key takeaway for me, also with leadership and like leading with empathy, and really the final take of Michael's, like the more important to be more human, to really also with mental health, but also just like checking in and being able to vent with your managers, and really the managers that are the most important part of making feeling more open. And
exactly. And what really stood out to me and was quite refreshing was that empathy, and quite honestly also vulnerability, it's also quite integrated with their company culture, at least the way they talk about their HR and people strategies. Now, we didn't have a chance to discuss much about their work from anywhere program that's been rolled out, but I think they're quite honest with the fact that they don't have all the answers today, right? And if you are a business leader navigating an unprecedented pandemic in a highly volatile market, if you think you're sitting on all the answers, then you're not the right leader for that role, right?
There are two things there that really resonates with me. One is the growth mindset for organizations and the leaders to have that sort of growth mindset, thinking that we do not sit on all the solutions right now, but we might see the problems, but we are solution focused. We'll get there. We'll find a way. And having that open communication and transparency with the people along the journey, explaining why we're doing something, and then the rest can follow, right? Like all of that just brings clarity.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's also something talking about the parental leave, and how talking about leadership and how that parental leave in these 6 months can be the best type of leadership training, because you see really the feedback comes directly. There's nothing
direct
you can do
feedback.
exactly that you know if you're doing well or if you're not doing well. I really like that take on parental leave. I thought it was amazing to hear. What were your
exactly,
thoughts?
and again, if you're looking at more perhaps from a skill building point of view, looking at empathy and vulnerability, I think anyone who's been trying to cope with with a diaper change at 4 a.m. after little sleep, and again, I'm speaking from my own experience here, are quite vulnerable. And I think, again, it's very refreshing that they're viewing a 6 months hiatus from work as leadership development, spending time with family. I think that's quite...
amazing.
And it's a paradigm shift, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that was quite interesting as well, because it is a part of the Swedish culture, right? They were talking about Spotify being originally a Swedish company, and how that's one of the cultural aspects that they are sharing, I guess, with the rest of the operation across the globe. But keeping that Swedishness.
Absolutely. You brought it back to Sweden,
yes.
Mia. Well done.
Very good, very good. And I think on that note, bringing it back to Sweden and from the Swedish Chamber of Commerce here in Hong Kong, I think that we should wrap it up and really thank both Katarina and Michael for this amazing talk, and also you guys, Anders and Mia. It has been great to be.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yes.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.